Okay, here we are. We're recording. All right. Hello, I Read YA. My name is Lisa Sandell, and I'm an editorial director at Scholastic Press, and it is my absolute honor, pleasure, and privilege to be talking with one of my most favorite authors of all time, Sharon Cameron. Sharon, hi, welcome.
Hello. And by the way, this is one of my favorite editors in the world. No, let's just be real. She is the favorite editor in the world. She is the only one. I love her to death. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. That was so nice. Thank you. So we are here to talk about your beautiful and important book, The Light in Hidden Places, which just came out. And we have a bunch of questions from fans and readers, and I have some questions for you. So I guess we can just dive right in. Okay. First of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about the book, how you first came across the story and these people? This is a novel based on a true story.
Right. So the way I came across this story was completely by accident. And it was a long time before I had ever even thought I would become a writer. I had a whole other life before my writing life. And writing was my enormous left turn. That was this surprising thing that I can't believe actually happened and did. But long before I had ever written one unassigned word in my life, I was just in my house doing my regular afternoon things, and I just happened to turn on the television. It was the early 1990s, and there was a woman on my TV screen, and she said 5 words. She said, "My name is Stefania Podgorska." And she had such a presence about her. It's really hard to describe unless you've seen her or been with her. She just has this strong personality that really comes through, and she just grabbed my attention. And I sat and ignored everything else I was supposed to be doing and listened to her tell me about being a Catholic Polish teenager during World War II, being alone, without parents, destitute in a Nazi-occupied city, being the sole caretaker of a 6-year-old sister, and how there was a knock on the door in the middle of the night, and on the other side of the door was a young Jewish man named Max Diamant, who had just jumped from a moving train that was taking him to a death camp. And he said, "Please hide me." And she chose to hide him. And I sat there riveted while she told me what this decision meant and what it meant to not only her life for the next few months, but the rest of her life. And it was one of the most astounding stories of sacrifice, of love, of heroism and humanity that I had ever heard. And I never forgot her story. Not for 23 years. She really did become my hero that day. And that's how I became aware of her story. She just kind of became a part of me.
Wow, it's amazing. And getting into the heads of Stefania and her younger sister, Helena, and all of the characters must have been just such an incredible journey for you. I wondered if you could talk about the research you did, who you met and interviewed, and where you went.
Yeah.
I find that interesting.
Yeah. Because, after 23 years after I saw that story, on my television, everything had changed. I had 5 novels I had published. I had things like Google, which was amazing. And so I decided, I thought, I'm going to look for Stefania Podgorska. I'm going to look for her. And wow. I looked for her and I found her. And actually I found her son first, Ed Berzminski. And he was very kind about a stranger stalking him a little and sending him an email and saying, I'm really, really interested in learning more about your mom. And so I actually went to Los Angeles and met up with him, and he took me to meet his mom. She was in the last year of her life at that time, but so she had dementia at that time, so she never knew she met me. But I will never ever forget meeting Stefania Podgorska, because how often do you get the privilege of just getting to sit down with someone that you've really taken to be, your hero for years and years? And she actually passed away while we were working on the book. But 3 weeks after she passed away, Ed Brzezinski, her son, and I went to Poland together to sort of rediscover her life. And so we went to Przemyśl, the city where everything happened. We went to the attic and to Tarska Street, where Stefania and Helena eventually hid 13 Jews while 4 Nazis slept in the bedroom right below them. And I got to stand in that attic, and I got to stand in that bedroom. And we got to meet Helena, the little sister, and talk with her about what those experiences were like for her. We got to meet one of the children who had been hidden in the attic. We went to the death camps. We met with historians. We even went and found the curve in the railroad tracks where young Max Beaumont had jumped from a moving train. He was the first one hidden. And so it was just an incredible trip. And between that and Stefania's unpublished memoir, which Ed shared with me, and all the stories and photos, those things really became the backbone of the novel. And it could have never been the novel I think that it should have been without all of those things, because it gave me such a window into what they were thinking and feeling, and what their thought processes were, and the decision-making process, to decide to do something that was so hard and so dangerous. And, Helena and Stefania was 16, Helena was 6. They were little girls. And they chose to do something that changed the world. They really did change the world. And so getting that window affected me so profoundly. It was life-changing. It was an absolute life-changing trip.
I can only imagine. Every time I hear you talk about it, every time I read the book, and I've read the book, I don't even know how many times now, I'm like moved to tears every single time, because it is what Helena and Stefania did is just so extraordinary. And yes, what do you think it was about their character that made them do something that people did, but like it wasn't a normal thing to stand up and say, I'm going to protect these people who can't protect themselves?
That's actually a really good point that you make about it being something so extraordinary, because not only was Stefania a 16-year-old girl, a woman, she was Polish, she was Catholic, she was many, many things that made it hard to do what she did. Her family didn't agree with what she did. Most of her society did not agree with what she did. She was bucking her culture. She was bucking everything around her to choose to do what she did. But I think they made those choices, both Stefania and Helena. And I get this from Stefania's memoir, where she talks about why she did what she did, and also my interview with Helena, where she took me by the hand and looked me in the face and told me why she did what she did. And they did it because they had made a decision long before Max ever knocked on the door. I think both of them had made a decision that some things were right and that some things were wrong, and that what was going on around them was 100% wrong. And they just weren't going to be a part of it. And if they could do something right, if they could do something to stand up against all of the hatred and the violence that was going on around them, they were going to do it, and they were going to risk their lives to do it because it was right. And that kind of internal fortitude, that kind of strength from within is I think that's why they're both my heroes, but it's also what I try to remember in my own life. I think it's what we all need. I think it's what I need. It's what the world needs. It's what everybody needs, is that kind of strength.
I totally agree. It's such a remarkable inspiration and reminder, and it's important,
Yes.
especially now.
Yes, especially now. I think you touched on another thing that I feel so strongly about is, yes, it's a story about World War II, and it's a story about things that happened in the past, but it's so much a story for now. It's about right now, because what those girls decided to do, and their reasons and their thought processes, which I really tried to get into in the book, step by step, how they came to those places, all of those things that they were experiencing, that hatred isn't gone. It's now. It's now. It's still out there. And we still need these stories. I think these stories of these kinds of heroes, we need them right now. It's not a story just for then.
Yeah, you're so right. You are so right. So what was the most powerful part of the book for you to write?
Um, oh gosh, this is a hard question, because the whole thing was very, very emotional for me. I wrote the book. I started writing the book on the plane. What I had a little bit already, but I kind of checked that and started again. And on the plane, on the way home, I started writing it, and oh gosh, the whole experience. I was so full of, the experience of being in all the places and meeting the people, that the whole thing felt powerful. But I guess if I had to choose a moment, it would be the moment that Stefania answers that second knock on the door, and she and Helena know that there are 13 Jews hidden in the attic, and two SS officers tell them that they have 2 hours to leave and abandon that house, because they're going to take over the house and live in the house, or and leave or be shot. And that moment where they have to decide what to do is still so powerful to me. Hearing her describe it, hearing Helena describe it, what that was like and what that decision was. They were the 13 Jews in the attic were begging them to run. They said, please go, run, because you're going to be killed. There's no reason for you to be killed along with all of us. And they just couldn't do it. That place inside of Stefania Podgorska said, I will not leave. And the strength it took to open that door 2 hours later, when she thought she knew exactly what was about to happen, and she thought she was going to die and her sister was going to die. It is such a powerful moment. It never stopped affecting me, I think.
Yeah, it's I mean, just hearing you talk about it again, it affects me as well. It's remarkable. It really is. There's a thunderstorm going on right now. So I don't know if you could hear the thunder, but it's like a very dramatic.
I love a thunderstorm. I wish it was thundering here. Oh.
Here's a question that was sent in to I Read YA. If there were just one thing that you could say to Stefania when she was a young woman, what would it be?
Oh, I can think of two things. Did I get to say two things?
You could say two things. You could definitely say two things.
The whole time I was writing this book, and I was looking at a lot of the photos that Ed Brzezinski, her son, sent me of her life after the attic, of them, the family being together on the beach, the family at holidays, or all the different celebrations, birthdays, that kind of thing. I just thought, I wish I could have gone to 16-year-old Stefania in the middle of all of that fear and danger and dread that she was experiencing every day. And I wish I could have told her, it's going to be all right. I wish I could go back and say to her, you are going to be all right. I wish that was the first thing. I wish I could do that somehow in time travel and give her that assurance that someday you'll be sitting on a beach.
Yeah.
And someday you'll have children, and someday you will be so happy. And I wish I could have told her that. But I think the other thing I wish I could have told her is how much her choices, oh gosh, I'm crying. Sorry.
I'm crying too.
How much her choices were going to matter. She was just an ordinary teenager, just living an incredibly ordinary life. In a small town in Poland, that nobody would have thought twice about. She wasn't somebody that you would think there's a significant person. And yet her choices mattered. Her choices mattered so much. They changed the world for 13 people. And then all the people that came after those 13, those choices changed everything. And they mattered. And don't our own choices have that exact same potential? And now I've made Lisa cry.
I'm weeping.
Sorry. Oh my gosh. But I really wish I could tell her that.
Yeah.
Because how could you know at the time? How can we know at the time? What insignificant thing? How could I know that when I turned on my TV in the middle of the day and a woman said, "My name is Stefania Podgorska," that it would completely change my life? I couldn't know that. And she didn't either. So, oh my gosh. Wow. My eyes don't know what to do with mascara anymore. I've been pulled up in pandemic mode.
Okay, so that's a great lead-in. That's a good segue to my next question for you.
Yes.
So given our current state of pandemic self-quarantining, does the reality of what the hidden 13, those 13 Jewish people that were forced to stay unmoving and silent in Stefania's attic mean something different or more to you now that we're all stuck inside our homes?
Well, it makes me, I really have thought about this a lot, because it makes me count every single one of my blessings. As bad as this situation is, and I could barely turn on the news because I'm scared to know, what is happening next. And this is such an incredibly difficult time for everybody. And it's very, very stressful. But at the same time, I realize, okay, I'm sheltering in place in a place where no one wants to kill me, where I have everything I need. I mean, I may not have everything I want, but I've got everything I need. I'm comfortable in my house. My family is here. And it just makes my troubles seem so small in comparison. These 13 people were sheltering in place with nothing. They were starving. They had to be silent. They could not move. There were rats running across their skin and they could not move. They were freezing in the winter and sweltering in the summer. It was horrific. And it makes my troubles seem like absolutely nothing. Nothing. Which is just another way I feel like that, okay, Stefania Podgorska, you have reached out and taught me another thing somehow. I don't know how she did it, but she did.
Yeah. It's a good way to get perspective.
Yes, I think so. I think so.
So we can move on, unless you have any questions for me.
I think it's an interesting opportunity, isn't it? How often do I get to ask Lisa questions? So Lisa, what did you think when I first brought this novel idea to you? I mean, did you think this was a good idea from the beginning?
I did. I didn't. There was never a moment when I thought it was anything but a good idea. I don't think I was quite prepared for how deeply it would touch and move me. And I'm going to start crying again. On the internet before. There should be a rule about that. Anyway, I don't think I was really prepared for how big and important and beautiful and moving this book would be. And I feel very, very lucky to have gotten to work on it with you.
Oh, thank you. That was a very nice thing to say. What's your favorite part of the book? What's the most powerful part for you?
It is a hard question because there's so many. I think it's maybe a tie between when Stefania and Helena stood their ground when the Nazis came to requisition the house, but maybe more so when, oh, there's a huge crack of thunder.
I heard that
one. When Max first showed up, having just jumped off the train and asked for shelter. And Stefania looked at Helena, and Helena said, we're doing this. And even as a really little young child, she got it.
Yeah. And if you ever get to meet Helena, it won't surprise you that she said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other part that, I'm sorry.
I said because that's what kind of person she is. Yeah.
I hope one day I have that good luck. But I also, so we didn't get into this, but Stefania knew the Diamant family before the Nazis invaded.
Right.
And when they were forced into the ghetto in their town, she went against all the rules that had been posted that said, on pain of death, non-Jewish people may not provide any aid or succor to Jewish people.
Right.
And she went into the ghetto and smuggled them food and medicine and, didn't even give a thought for her own safety. She just went in there because she knew it was the right thing to do, and it was what she had to do. And that's so, so inspiring.
I agree. I agree.
All right. Well, we can move on to some other kinds of questions.
Okay.
Sharon, can you tell us what your favorite book is? Do you have a favorite?
Oh gosh, yes, I can tell you. Well, but I can't tell you one. You can never make me choose one of anything. Except my favorite editor. I can choose one of that. So if you know me, if anyone knows me at all, they know that I love Lord of the Rings. I have loved Lord of the Rings all my life. Or all of my life since I was 12, the first time I read it. And I've read that book at least once a year ever since I was 12, sometimes more. I think I've read it maybe like 46, 47 times now. I just read it over and over again, but like not because like I mean, I like fantasy. I like all different genres, but I like fantasy, but it's not because of like the magic or the monsters, all of those kinds of things. It's really just because I think that theme, and maybe this is part of what appeals to me in Stefania's story too. I just made this connection in my head right this second, is that, that theme of a small person and the small, the insignificant, being able to change everything just because they do the right thing. I think that is always the theme that has really, really gotten me. And then I guess in a whole nother complete vein, my other very, very favorite book, which has nothing to do with anything, is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I love that book. It's all dark and gothic and moody and ghosty, and my favorite villain in the whole world is in that book. So yes, I love it.
It's so funny. It's those two books I think are so you, like
in two really weird ways, right?
Yeah. It totally fits.
It is me.
What is your favorite genre?
I don't have, now that I can't say at all. I do not have a favorite genre. I like story, and to me, a good story is a good story, whether it's in space or in history or fantasy or whatever it is. It is, it's more about the story for me than the genre that story falls into, which might be why all my previous books are slightly genreless.
I was just going to say that also completely fits the pattern.
Makes perfect sense for me, doesn't it?
You've written in so many gender bending smash up categories. It's like, it's very wonderful and interesting quality. Do you read a lot of historical fiction?
I do. I read a lot of everything. I read the things, that appeal to me, but historical does appeal to me a lot. I don't know. I'm always so fascinated by the mystery of the past. It's, it's like this great puzzle that we have little clues to, that if we can just put them all together, we can figure out. And it's the reality of what was. It's everything that led to what we are now. And that's just such a vast mystery to me. And there's so much of it that's lost. I'm always wanting to recapture a little piece of that and figure it out. So yeah, and I do like those. I do like historical, fiction, that, especially one that just plunges me in, to those places that I could never go.
Your writing does that too.
Oh, thank you.
What are you reading right now?
Let's see. I finished two things really recently, so I haven't started a new thing since I finished, but I finished They Went Left by Monica Hess, which I really, really liked. I really enjoyed that book a lot. It was sort of post World War II and more about the displaced persons camps, and that was a fascinating story, and I loved the way she wrote it. Really enjoyed that. And then like a couple of days ago, I read a P.G. Woodhouse novel because they make me happy and they're silly and funny and completely different than anything that's going on right now. And so I read a Woodhouse.
Nice.
Yeah.
That must be like a nice step away from reality.
Yes, it was.
Do you have any good recommendations for people who are stuck at home right now?
Oh, besides reading all the favorite books that I like, so we can talk about them later. I want everybody to go read Lord of the Rings and Rebecca, and you can read my book too. That'll be so nice, and and then we can chat about it. Those are my recommendations. That would be lovely. So
okay, and I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Also from an I Read YA fan. Okay. Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Oh gosh, yes, I do have advice for aspiring writers, and I think this is what worked for me. And this is going to sound so cliche. I hate to even say it, but aspiring writers should read, 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 and read. And I think that not just reading like a reader, but reading like a writer. You know, for years and years and years, I think I was a writer without knowing it. I always read books, like even like I said, Lord of the Rings, I would go back and reread passages and sit there and think, what did he do that makes me cry? Not that it's that hard to make me cry, obviously, but like what did he do to make me cry in this section? Was it the words that he chose? Was it the theme? Was it the character? Was it what it meant to the character? What was it that affected me so? And I would think about that in all the books that I read. And I think what it showed me I was learning without knowing I was learning, but I was learning what makes me tick creatively. And I was learning what does not make me tick creatively. And I found that so useful when I then sat down and started to create for the first time, because I got to know myself as a creative person through reading all of these other wonderful works and figuring out, taking those little pieces of what worked for me and setting aside the little pieces that didn't work for me, and then taking it and putting my own spin on that. And I think that process is really, really important if you want to write. It helps you to get to know yourself and just to understand the craft too.
I think that's fantastic advice. It's
good.
Really smart. Yeah.
Good.
Well, I don't have any more questions for you right now. I want to thank you.
Oh, what are you reading in quarantine?
Oh my gosh. So I had I had a few weeks to just hang out, and I started reading War and Peace, which I've never read before.
You did? Oh my gosh. So, that is very brave of you. How are you liking it?
I'm actually loving it.
Really? I've never read War and Peace, so we will have to discuss. Okay. Wow.
Get on it.
How far in are you?
I'm not that far. I'm like 100 pages or something.
Oh, okay. So you have a while to go.
I have a long while to go.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, I'm looking forward to this discussion.
I am too.
Finish. Yes.
So you should jump on it.
I will. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll pick up War and Peace. I'll go straight from PG Woodhouse to War and Peace. That makes perfect sense for me. That's a Sharon Cameron move if I ever heard
it. That is a Sharon Cameron move.
Yeah, it is. Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you so much, Sharon. It was wonderful. Do you have a copy of the book to hold up?
I forgot to get it, but I can get it really, really quick. Right there.
Well, I'll talk. Please check out Sharon Cameron's books. She has written some fabulous novels, including most recently, The Light in Hidden Places. Thank you, Sharon. Sorry to make you jump up. And thank you again for joining us. This is really fun.
All right.
Everybody at I Read YA enjoys it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.